Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have another episode today that I'm kind of interested in talking about. But first of all, I want to say hi to Jamie. What's happening, friend?
Hello, happy to be here. This is an interesting topic.
Yes, so we are going to take a look at something that is often overlooked in food addiction recovery, but it can be a powerful game changer, and that's how anger can end up linking itself to the addiction. Now, we all know that when we're trying to recover from ultra processed food addiction, there's so much more to it than just stopping eating certain foods. The mental and emotional hurdles can be some of the biggest obstacles we face. And today we're going to talk about one of those hurdles, and that's the anger aspect. We've talked about anger management in the past, but this is a different uh, animal than anger management. And this is more about how do we manage the anger that creeps up inside the addiction and why it's so critical for our recovery.
Yeah, so when Paige and I were getting ready to record this episode, I said to Paige, tell me a little bit more about the anger angle because it's something that whenever I hear, anger relating to something that we're, dealing with or a psychological condition or sort of anger, I think of shame and I think of regret or resentment. And those are emotions that are in no way, shape, or form helpful to anyone in recovery. Then for those of us who have been in recovery for a long time, that they can, take us down, right? Those emotions can take us down quickly and many times back into our addictions
Right.
or the addictive behaviors or eating disordered behaviors. So we want to be very mindful of when those strong emotions come up. And I really think that a good antidote, and we'll talk more about this, is, maybe a title could be around giving yourself grace, right? When you feeling that the anger, it's really the antidote is giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to start talking about the connection here. And when we talk about the obsession around these ultra processed foods that are not, they're truly not foods, right? They're substances. It's easy to focus solely on the physical aspects, right? The craving, addictive ingredients, how these foods impact our bodies. But we have to talk about emotions, right? And I thought I heard this great um, phrase. Anytime we seek food to fill a psychic need, that's an indication we're in our disordered eating. We're in our obsession of food, right? Anytime we're looking in an outside thing, substance, like
Ah,
to fill our emotional, or in their case, psychic. So psychic meaning psychological, not psychic. I can see it in the future. That is an indication, right? That we're in that disordered thinking, that we're in our illness, if you will.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Major, major point. I love that. And anger, frustration, resentment, those emotions just lead exactly into what you were saying about how they fuel our desire to numb ourselves with the food. So if you think about it, how many times have you turned to comfort food after an argument, a stressful day at work, or feeling unheard or appreciated? Anger can act as this trigger for overeating or binging, especially when we haven't learned how to express ourselves or deal with it in a healthy way, which leads back to exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's going deeper though, right? When we think about those of us who struggle with ultra processed foods, with moderating, like again, these are not foods, these are substances. So of course we're going to have to shield ourselves from the cravings around them. We might harbor a lot of self-directed anger, resentment, shame. We might get angry at ourselves for failing to stick to a plan or for falling off the wagon, as it were, or for how our bodies look or feel after years of eating
Mhm,
unhealthy foods. The negative emotional loop can become really a vicious cycle. So
mhm,
anger can lead to eating, and eating, of course, we know eating when we're not hungry, when without the presence of physical hunger,
mhm.
for many of us eating leads to guilt. And then again, that's the cycle, right? So the
Yep.
guilt fuels the cravings or the seeking outside of ourselves for something, and the food that we eat when we're in that state fuels it again.
Yeah.
And there's many, many um, thoughts. And I think, professionals that would say that for many folks in a cycle of addiction or abuse, right? And again, I'm not a huge fan of the term food addict. Because again, that's a very personal label, right? So if somebody wants to label themselves that, I'm all for it, but I don't want a blanket statement those with those words. But when I think about somebody who's abusing food-like substances for ease and comfort, or peace and comfort, seeking that from outside of themselves, there's so much that comes with that, that I think we have the opportunity to help them see the cycle. And many times folks are putting themselves in a cycle, right? They're sort of putting themselves in a state of shame, a state of resentment, a state of guilt, state of anger, frustration, so that they can go and seek their reward. And again, the reward, as we know, is substances, food-like, drug-like, alcohol-like substances that people are seeking. So they're sort of setting themselves up so they can reward, air quotes, reward themselves with their addictive behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be, I've seen in my own behavior, I've observed it in others, I've heard stories shared in the rooms of recovery. People will create storms around them so that they can then go and literally use their drug. So again, learning to manage this anger, it can be really a powerful step toward breaking that cycle.
Yeah, that's basically just that self-destructive pattern. I never thought
Yes,
about it that way. So, hey, now I've got an excuse to go
exactly.
eat. Have
And
you
I think it's
found?
subconscious, but it happens.
Oh, no, I totally agree because the addiction is doing its job is to survive, right?
Right.
So it's going to
Well, I mean, its job is maybe to protect, right? I think it's
touche.
dysfunctional job.
Yeah. But okay, it wants to survive. And it needs to keep you in a certain way in order to have access
Mhm.
to the food. But do you feel like you've recognized that at any point in your own recovery
Oh yeah.
journey?
Yeah, for sure. I've dealt with all of these different um, manifestations of the emotions and how they send me to the food or to the behaviors around food. For me, it's not just food, right? It's not just eating. It might be behaviors like a lot of a lot of time worrying or obsessing about my body shape or size, obsessing about what I did or didn't eat, what I will or won't eat, um, obsessing about the way clothes fit or don't fit, obsessing about the way I look in a mirror, the number on a scale, all the things, right? If those are for me, my substance abuse looks like, or substance use disorder looks like, um, all of those things. It might look like a closet full of clothes that don't fit. It might look like, trauma cycles with family. It might look like, and that's why I'm so, because I've lived it, and when I was in it, I didn't see it. And now it's very easy for me to see it in myself, and I also see it in others. So if there's drama, if there's stuff happening with others, I'm usually, that's an indication that somebody's in their sort of abuse cycle and stirring something up outside of themselves to give them a reason to use.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And as far as me, I have a very mild temperament. So it's rare that I have, some emotions, but it's rare that I actually feel that emotion of anger. That's just I've got a narrow range and so that is typically not one of the emotions I feel. I get very uncomfortable with anything big, so my feelings get kind of quiet inside versus loud. It's just my wiring. It's not good or bad. It just happens to be how I came to this earth. So I I just, when things happen for me, I just need to slow things down and start processing. I just
Mhm.
get very internal, very quiet. I just need to think. I can't move fast in my thoughts. I just need to be in a quiet place. So what I usually feel on big emotions are more just sadness or pain or frustration. And for me, I always feel like that it's that first big drop on the
Yeah.
roller coaster. I'm not like anger management angry. I'm injured party angry. I was robbed angry. I didn't deserve this angry, wondering why in the world I ever have to deal with this angry. So for me, I also wonder, why am I not seeing this in other people around me struggling with this, seemingly not
Yeah.
worried about eating processed food? That that ticks me off. And at least on the outside, it appears like there's so many people walking around without a care in the world when it comes to the food stuff. We were at the movies a few weekends ago, and you see people walking around with these, like, when I say buckets, I'm not saying a derogatory thing. I'm saying it's an actual bucket of
Absolutely.
popcorn and a giant size candy and a giant
Right.
size drink, and it seems like they're just happy go lucky, not a care in the world. And I am literally doing mathematical gymnastics in my head going, I mean, it costs $30 just to get into the movies, and they had to spend at least that or more on the food there. It's astronomical, not to mention the gazillion calories that are in there.
Mhm.
And it sounds like all of that is coming from a diet mentality place for me. But honestly, that's just my first thought when I see it, followed by, oh man, their stomach is going to hurt. They're all smiles now, but let's wait
Yeah.
to see them when it's like if you've been to Disney and you're on the train going, the tram, and everybody smiles, but on the way home,
Yeah,
everybody's
everyone's
mad.
exhausted and crying. Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, and maybe it's jealousy too, is like, why can't I control myself? And when these binges come on, or why do I have to eat till I'm physically ill? Why can't I stop myself like a normal person when I've had enough? So why can't I have birthday cake on my birthday and not have it turn into a train wreck? For me, that's the frustration. It's just depressing. And then I have to fight with that negative self-talk of, will I ever get this under control or not? So that's where my emotions come from. Do you
Mhm.
think that the act of eating the ultra processed food was ever a way for you to suppress or numb anger? We've kind of talked about that a little bit, but do you think you've used that to try and numb the anger or frustration?
Oh, for sure. Back in the day, yeah, for sure. Again, this is back in probably 2009, 10. I started to notice that when I felt a frustration about something, or I felt anger about something or someone, I would use food. Right. But this is the crux of recovery. This is definitely the crux of 12-step recovery, if for those of you who've been in that world. And I'm not, here advocating only for 12-step recovery. It is a tool in the tool bag. But their whole thing is, if you're going to something outside of yourself to resolve your emotional needs, that is the addictive cycle that needs to be broken with a connection to something that's bigger than you.
Yeah, I think I just did that right before we got on here. I had told Jamie I've had computer problems for the past couple of days and wiped out my hard drive accidentally. And I knew we had this meeting and he was supposed to be done 20 minutes earlier, and it was literally up ticking till I had to hop on here, and I'm panicked and I'm like, I'm just all of a sudden really hungry and I want to go ahead and eat my lunch, 2 hours earlier. And so that prime example of, I was a nervous wreck and I just thought, well, I just need to eat and calm myself down because I'm just ready to have a panic attack. So yeah, I did it right before we got on here. Luckily, I didn't go overboard and it's not too bad, but I know I really wasn't that hungry. I know I was just very
Mhm.
nervous and trying to settle myself down.
And
So
that's, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And I think that's why it's so important for folks to identify this, because it's been 17 years this month, 17 years since I began recovery, and it's not a linear
Oh,
journey. And it truly is not a linear journey. There are 2 steps forward and 1 step back some days, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right? And all the variations of it. And there are times when I'm aware that, hey, I'm frustrated or I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'm just going to the fridge or going to my meal sooner than I needed to. But I'm telling you that for me, I don't that behavior is still present. And the trick is to have food on hand that when those behaviors are there, the feelings come up, life on life's terms, we have an outlet, yes, in our tools, yes, in our breathing work, yes, in our other recovery stuff, but also those habits are deeply ingrained, and they were ingrained in me twice as long as before I started recovery. So they were until my well, really until my probably late 30s, even though I was in recovery by then. So these were behaviors that I was doing for a very long time, and they're proving to take a very long time to undo. Yes, I'm aware. Yes, I always have good food that backs me up and that does not take me off my rails, but it still happens, and I don't know that it's something that would ever happen or would never that would ever stop.
Yeah, what I love, two things that you said. First of all, bravo on 17-year anniversary coming up, because I bring that up because it really puts a spotlight on the fact that this is not a quick fix. And that's why I think so many people quit because it's not the uh, LA weight loss. We're going to lose,
That's
15
right.
pounds in 2 weeks. It's not that. This is not what we're doing. This is about long-term results. And it's what you said. This is a 17-year journey that you just zigzag your way
Right. No,
forward,
no.
and that's the only, I mean, there's just no other way. And because you stayed in there that long time and that journey and zigzagged your way, you have figured out the tools that work for you. I just mentioned I ate my lunch a couple hours earlier,
Exactly.
but my lunch was prepared 3 days ago for what was going to happen today. So did I eat earlier? Yes, but it wasn't like a full out, binge or anything like that. So I, what my vice was today was eating a little earlier because I was nervous versus what I would have done in the past of going to a bag of peanut M&Ms and a Diet Coke and eating the whole thing.
Exactly.
So that's how we see the zigzag movement, the needle moving.
Mhm.
So things just look a little different. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the journey. I don't want a 2 week and then it's over. I want to be on, aware
Mhm.
and have my faculties about me at all times. So, we were talking about the anger in the addiction. You were telling about what your experience has been. And for me, if I'm really, really upset, it actually takes my appetite away. Like gut punch upset, it's doubles
Yes,
me over.
I agree.
And oddly, I was never able to predict when these flare-ups for me, as far as the binges, would hit me. It was very random for me, and I'm just much more susceptible during celebratory times than upset time. In the movies where the girl comes home after the bad date, she puts on the oversized t-shirts and her pajama pants, and she's sitting on the kitchen floor with the spoon and the ice cream, upset.
Uh,
That's not me. That's when,
yeah.
it takes my appetite away. I'm, yeah, much more vulnerable. If I'd had a great first date or something like that, I would be much more vulnerable when I got home. Do you think that that feeling of anger in the addiction is pretty common, though? You think most people fight with that on some level?
I do. I think that, and again, it depends on what level, what substance, right? Or what behavior. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not substances, sometimes it's behavior. Like I was
Yeah.
just, where was I? I was in a recovery meeting last weekend with my husband, and there was a member of the group talking about how they would numb out. They would numb out for them when they got triggered, they would numb out with television. And they
Oh,
would just, or somebody else use the example of video games. Those are not my things, but they are, television is my husband's go-to. He will sit there and numb out in front of the TV if there's something on his mind or something upsetting or to decompress, like that's his soother. For me, it's eating. So I think it's knowing yourself and knowing what you use and being aware of how you're using it. Uh, I think that's really important.
that's
Really,
funny you said that about TV, because I'm like major, when you're saying that, I'm like, oh man, I'm so guilty. At the end of the day, I just need an hour
that's
to,
different. That's different. I'm talking about like a deep hours long disconnection from life.
oh.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day is not. for an hour is not what I'm talking about. That's just normal decompression. I'm talking about what people might use when they're feeling really overwhelmed or really stressed. They might really need that time. Sometimes it'll look like it's essentially where they're totally immersed. And for him, for my husband, it'll be a TV and another screen in front of him at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it'll be total immersion, and there's really no way to break through that unless you're right in front of them.
And he's got programs running in the background too.
Yes, yes, yes. But a few weeks ago, the start to my work this year, my 9 to 5 work this year was very stressful. There were some big balls dropped at the end of the year, no pun intended, but they were huge things that were not carried out the way that I had left directions on. I'm not sure where the disconnection was. But things were not done, and by the time that we realized those things were not done, we were 3 weeks behind where we needed to be. And we had to do a whole bunch of rescheduling and reorganizing, and it was a mess. And a colleague of mine who I deeply, have a deep affection for and deep trust in, had totally dropped the ball, and in a huge way, and totally let me down and caused a whole bunch more work and stress and drama at the beginning of the year that I had prepared, since early December to avoid. And it was just so upsetting, so upsetting. That was one of those days where I was so angry and I knew it. And I had no interest in food. I needed to go out and blow off some steam. We went out, I sat around people. I'm not a big drinker at all. Like, I could care less about alcohol, but we went out, we sat at the bar, we watched a football game with a bunch of other people, and I forgot about the frustration that I was feeling, and like I needed the change of scenery with other people around me. I knew that. I knew staying home would not have been good. So I know enough to know what I need when life kicks me in the gut like that. It usually doesn't, it's not about eating out, it's not about drinking out, it's not about any of those things. It's about, I need connection, I need a total distraction.
Mm-hmm.
But years ago, when I would have those big gut punches, I would add insult to injury and put food on top of it.
Oh, wow, that's a big well said on that one. Yeah. And you're a big proponent of change location. When you're having
Huge,
big emotion, change
huge.
location, change location,
So I
change
could not
location.
wait to get out. I was like, nope, out. We're going out. I don't care where we go. I need to get out of this house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dark, it's winter, it's very cold. So it was not something that like I could just go out for a walk. I knew I needed to go out and be among people.
Yeah. And you guys just got snow too, right? In Houston?
Yeah, this was before that, but yes, we
That
did.
that I just remembered somebody saying that that was a huge anomaly.
Yep,
Yep.
shut down the city for 2 days.
Yeah, because you're not prepared. Your infrastructure isn't prepared to.
We don't have any of it. Nothing. Nothing. It was a solid 24 hours that things were shut down, and now it's starting to open up.
Yeah, crazy. So one of the things that we know is that anger is a secondary emotion. It's never the primary emotion. So oftentimes it's easier to be angry than it is to be what you really are. And it's very uncomfortable to be sad, disappointed, resentful, lonely, etc. But anger is an acceptable emotion in society. People run entire campaigns fueled by anger and grievance. So it's easy to feel riled up. It's less easy to get people to admit they're feeling afraid, abandoned, or rejected. Those really hurt deeply. The real work is peeling back the anger and seeing what's really there, acknowledging it and allowing yourself to feel it. People can use anger as a protective bubble. It also can keep others out, but it's also exhausting to maintain because you're in that sympathetic nervous system all the time and on guard. And our nervous systems are not built to last in that survival mode.
Mm.
Unchecked, it leads to things like autoimmune disease, and people can spend years getting rid of it.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Um, so I want to just build on that thought because we're sharing this because some of you might be operating in your own little protective bubble. It seems to easier in a way to keep up the facade, and really what we're advocating for is sort of seeing it for what it is and taking it down brick by brick if you need to. Letting go doesn't mean getting over it. It really just means releasing the toxin that poisons your ability to truly live. So this is a huge theme of detachment, right? Letting go is detaching from the feelings, detaching from the anger, detaching from the behaviors and the things that you can't change. It's the crux of it is the serenity prayer, right?
Yeah.
Is asking God to help you change the things you can, and to let go of trying to change the things that you can't. And the only thing that we can change is us and our outlook and our actions and our behaviors and our choices and our emotional states. That's it. Nothing else, nothing, not what the other person did or said or didn't do. Can't change any of that. Can't change that. Can't change what happened. All we can do is change our reactions to it. So that's why I think it's very important to know what's in your control and what's not. So again, if we think about taking control back, it's understanding when anger might be tied to our relationship with food, rather than other aspects of our lives. So we start this process of self-awareness and some signs to look out for. Paige will dive in.
Yeah, the timing of the anger. Do you notice anger flaring up before meals or when you're hungry? Hanger. Does it
Yep.
happen after consuming ultra-processed food, sugar, or caffeine? These can cause mood swings and irritability.
Yeah. We also want to look at your patterns around food choices. Do you feel angry after eating something that you told yourself you wouldn't eat? Or this could stem from guilt or frustration tied to food rules or restrictions. Those
Mhm.
are, and by the way, those food rules and food restrictions, black white thinking, all of that is in my experience is I'm in my cycle of abuse. If I
Yeah,
have rigid rules and I have anger about breaking or wanting to break a rigid rule, it is because it is too rigid. And we
yeah.
need to give ourselves some shades of gray. That's where recovery is. And again, if you look at another pattern around timing, right, of your eating. So not timing of the anger, but timing of meals, right? Does skipping meals or eating something overly processed leave you more irritable than usual? Then that's probably an indication that it's not food that's going to support your recovery.
Right. So physical symptoms is another thing to take a peek at. Is your anger accompanied by physical sensations like fatigue, a racing heart, or shakiness? These could be signals that you're having imbalances with your blood sugar caused by your diet.
Yep. Does anger arise when you think about food body image or dieting? This might indicate unresolved emotional ties to eating habits or food guilt. Again, for me, this is sort of all encompassing in my illness when I'm looking at the reactions I have to these thoughts.
Mhm.
And again, it also can connect to mood, right? If you're finding yourself being short with loved ones, or if you have, sort of an uncharacteristic reaction to life on life's terms, that's again, this is all related to managing those emotions without food.
Yeah. So another thing is after eating clean whole food, do you notice, this is on the other hand, do you notice a difference in your mood or ability to manage anger? I know that one for me is a huge one. I do feel more in control when I'm just eating the whole foods. And conversely, do certain ultra processed foods leave you feeling angry or more emotionally reactive hours later? It sticks with me for a long time if I get into something I didn't want to. It's
Yes.
not good for me emotionally.
Yeah. So here's what you can do. You can write down your meals and your moods to identify patterns. That's something that's very helpful. A food and mood journal, they call it. You can also pause and reflect around your meals, or every time you're noticing that you're wanting to reach for food, and asking yourself, am I, hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Am I, having an emotion, right, about something? Uh, in the 12-step world, they talk a lot about HALT. Paige and I have talked a lot about HALT, that acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It should have an S. It should be HALTs. And the S would be stressed, right? So if you're feeling any kind of an uncomfortable emotion, that would qualify as pausing. Pausing. If you're HALTs, there should be a pause to
Yeah.
figure out what your real needs are, instead of the knee jerk, which for most of us, when we're in those halts places, the knee jerk was reaching for food.
Mhm. Uh, you can prioritize nutrition, focus on foods that support emotional balance, like clean proteins, healthy fats, and complex carbs.
And physical activity is a great way to release anger in a healthy way, whether it's going for a walk, hitting the gym, dancing, anything that can help burn off that emotional energy. It's not about burning off calories, it's about burning off emotional energy.
Hmm. It's exactly what you said about the change location. That really ties into exactly what you just said.
Mhm.
So mindfulness, also practicing mindfulness, it's about staying present and aware of your emotions without judgment. When you feel anger coming on, don't try and push it away or stuff it down with food. Instead, acknowledge it by being mindful. You can feel the anger without letting it control your actions. Jamie is famous for saying, emotions are just signals. They're nothing to be afraid of. It's
Mhm.
just a dashboard light.
Yep. Exactly. And you want to channel things into something productive, advocating for better food policies or helping others along the path of service, essentially getting out of self and serving someone else, is going to be huge. And I'll do this last one,
Yeah.
really around pausing. It's all about practicing the pause. The pause is huge. Taking a deep breath, pausing, especially when you notice that you're one of HALTSs. If you're noticing those things, that is your indication to do nothing else. Just pause and then see where you are.
Mm-hmm. Huge. I love the sleep on it. Just I just need to sleep on it, and I always think more clearly in the morning. Sometimes I need to sleep on it twice, and that's fine, but usually 2 to 3 days, I'll have a
Yeah,
clear picture of what I'm going to feel. So these techniques, they're simple, but they work because they break that emotional cycle before it takes over. And that's really what we're doing is pattern disruption, right?
exactly.
So, Jamie, I'm going to ask you in a minute if you have any other tools that you've used that we haven't mentioned to manage anger that doesn't involve turning to food. And as we've talked about, that pausing and processing, they're really my number one. Lots of self-talk, lots and lots of self-talk. And I try to be unbiased with myself in the self-talk, try to look at it from everybody's angle. And I think art or music is also good creative outlets as well. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, music, whether listening to it, I have a drum that I play. I love all of that kind of stuff. Sometimes anger, again, is really more about what's happening in your body than what's happening around us. So it's important to pause and look inside and identify what's happening because the food is not going to solve what's happening inside of us. Healing the relationship with food can help us reclaim our balance, right? But it's that the work of finding balance when we're upset is ours. It's not going to come from outside of us.
Yeah.
So let's talk real quick about, again, when we think about recovery, how to manage anger effectively.
Yeah, so one thing that we know is when we are using anger, and Jamie did this so well earlier by pointing out that sometimes part of the addiction can be sly by introducing anger. So it's an opportunity for an excuse for a binge.
Absolutely.
So anger can be a distraction. When we're caught up in anger, it pulls our focus away from the real issue we need to address in recovery, such as our relationship with food, our emotional well-being, our health goals. Learning to manage anger helps us stay centered on what actually matters.
Yes. Remember, anger can sabotage our process and our progress. So again, we have to learn to deal with it in healthy ways. And reaching for things outside of us, including food, junk food, processed food, ultra processed crap, all of it, right, is an attempt to solve something outside of you that can only be solved from inside of you.
Yeah. I love that. So you just said it so well. Look within, look within, look within. If you're looking out, out, out. And I've never thought about it that way. I'm so glad that you
Yeah,
brought
and
that to.
we're taught from a very early age to not look within, right? That because as children you can't.
You skinned your knee. Here's a cookie.
Or you look to your parents to emotionally regulate you because you don't know how to manage your big emotions you're feeling after you skin your knee or whatever. So if your parents are not providing that to you and they're just giving you something that teaches you and reinforces that it's coming from outside of you, with a substance like food, that's even more, again, unintentional, well-intended, maybe even damage, but it is damage that they do. So we are taught very, very young, that is the way that we're grown, to look outside of us for comfort. But then at some point, the best thing that we could be taught by our parents or our community is to look within to really find the answers we need instead of outside.
Yeah. And the doctors don't need to give the kids suckers after their shots.
That's, yeah, the whole situation.
So anger management builds emotional resilience. Managing anger is like building a muscle, and I love that visual so much. The more you practice, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes, and as you become more resilient, you're better equipment then to handle life stresses without turning to food as a coping mechanism.
I agree. So anger is not a bad emotion. Again, it's just a dashboard light. It's really that indicator that something's not right in our environment or within ourselves. And because we can't control the environment around us, what's the serenity prayer? We cannot control the things outside of us. So we need the courage to control the things that we can, which is us. And so instead of exploding or pushing it away or other learned behaviors, going within and asking, what's the message? What do I truly need here? What am I truly feeling? Again, that's all part of the healing journey. And there are different, these dashboard light will really be an indicator of a deeper issue, typically a deeper issue, a boundary that needs to be put in, a value that's been breached, something that needs to be explored.
Well, it's a gift, right? You're gifting yourself with getting to the root problem. And even though we want to bury it, bury it, bury it, it's always so much better. And it's never quite as bad when you discover what it really is.
Mhm.
So when we shift our mindset to see anger as a teacher, we stop reacting and start responding. This reframing allows us to channel the energy of anger into constructive action. Let's say you're angry about something at work, for instance, what you had to deal with, using that energy to motivate you to have a calm but firm conversation about this issue. And I'm sure you did. And I'm sure that person felt horrible about what had happened.
Mhm.
But the key is not suppressing anger, but expressing it in a healthy and productive way.
Yeah. So as you know, again, an often overlooked aspect of this topic is really the idea of grace and forgiveness, right? Which is really why I really think that we might title this episode something to do with the word grace.
Yeah.
It's not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves, right? Holding on to
Yeah.
anger can really lead to bitterness, and it's toxic, right? That bitterness creates an
Yeah.
emotion inside of us, a hormonal cascade really inside of us that
Hmm.
takes us into dark places and keeps us there. And again, it's not that when we practice grace, giving ourselves grace, giving others grace, which is something that I, as angry as I was, I knew I had to practice grace and I knew I had to practice forgiveness for this person,
Yeah.
because it was for me. It was for
Yeah.
me, and also acknowledging that, God's got this. He's gonna have an outcome that is way bigger and more orchestrated than I could ever see. And it's not up to me to punish the person or it's up to me to understand, to look in the mirror, to see what I could have done differently, and to leave the rest up to him. So that's what I did. And this person and I have an excellent working relationship still, and it was never even harmed because I could have, I had many legs to stand on, but I chose not to come back at her about any of it.
Bitterness is just never a good look on anybody, is it?
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that example because that's very poignant and people can learn a lot from that. A helpful practice here is self-compassion as well. When you catch yourself reacting in anger instead of beating yourself up for it, remind yourself that you're human. You're learning and you're growing. The more you practice these skills, the better you'll get at managing anger in a way that feels empowering. So remember, it's just all about choosing how you respond to life's challenges, and you have the power to do so. So as we finish up, we have a couple listener questions. Jamie, you want to take the first one?
So what's the greatest advice you give to someone who feels overwhelmed by anger while trying to recover? Go back and listen to this episode. right? I mean, really, like find episode 99 of Real Food Recovery. Um, it's truly to stop seeking outside of you for something that you can really truly um, work on and can be solved inside.
And I think the greatest advice that you gave was the halt, the just take a beat.
Yeah, pause. Yeah.
We've got one more. Do you think community or support groups can help people process and move through their anger in recovery? I do. I definitely do because at RFR we focus on all things that come up in recovery, and we look at it, we're able to look at it and manage it from every different angle. And when you're in a support group like Real Food Recovery, you have the gift of hearing others' experiences and you are able to learn from those and what they have been through and how they solved their issues. Plus, you feel like you're not in this alone, which is huge. It's so nice to have support, love, and understanding while you're on this journey. That love, safety, and belonging are some of our core human needs, and those can be satisfied in our recovery group setting. So, yes. Anything else you want to add, Jamie?
Nothing. I think this is a good topic.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping to bring it to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, you're very welcome. And you're right. It is not talked about much, but yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I thought this was a great conversation. And if you want to know more, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we hope to see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.